Hey guys, Daggz here, going through my review of Call of Cthulhu. Sorry it took so long to get it up and running, but I wanted to make sure that I was thorough. I will be grading each chapter and the game overall on the storyline, the creepy factor, the atmosphere, the audio, and the graphics. So for chapter 1, because it is the starting of the story and there's not a lot to really go by. It just really kind of sets the mood. So for overall storyline, I gave it a 5 out of 10. So all of my scoring are out of a 10-point system. So storyline for the first chapter is 5 out of 10. Creepiness is 6 out of 10. Atmosphere, audio, and graphics are 10 out of 10 because they're just absolutely spot on. I really like the ease of controls. The music is just stunning. I love the soundtracks throughout the whole game. I love the intrigue in it, and I love the period atmosphere. They really set the tone that this game is set in the 20s. Um, I did mention in the video that the trophy that I was looking for was Detective Edward Pierce instead of John Raymond LaGrasse. And the song that plays in the office when uh, you're getting the game going is called I'll See You in My Dreams by um, Isham Jones from 1924. And it's also the song that plays in the end credits. I think it's just absolutely beautiful. You could find it on YouTube. You could find it on, I think, on Spotify. I'm not too sure, but it's got the music by Isham Jones with the accompaniment by Ray Miller's orchestra and singer Frank Bessinger, and the words are by Gus Kahn. So then we have. So for the overall points for chapter 1, it's 41 points, which is reasonable for just building the storyline and getting it to um, just giving you the first little bit of, getting acquainted with the controls and figuring out what it is that you're required to do. For chapter 2, I gave it a 6 for a storyline because it is still building and it's not quite at peak yet. For creepiness, I gave it a 7. For atmosphere, I gave it a 10 because I don't think there's too many points in the game where the atmosphere is not chilling and thrilling and captivating. And so for the audio, I did give it a 6, though that's mostly due to technical issues and not based on the game's audio directly. For graphics, I gave it a 10. I don't think that there's many chapters where the atmosphere or the graphics are less than 10 because they're really on point, really stellar. Um, so because there were technical issues, I feel that it may have pulled away from the game itself, or at least the gaming experience. Hopefully it wasn't too distracting. Um, Managed to get through the game without too much incident. So overall for chapter 2, it got 39 points, which again is reasonable for the first section of build up or second section of build up where it's your first venture onto the island and then you can really start exploring into the storyline and figuring out what choices will impact your final outcome of the game to give you one of the 4 options for endings. There's one ending which is always going to be there, and 2, if not the other 3, you have to make choices that lead up to them. So it's at chapter 2 where you really start to make those choices that will impact your outcome in the final ending. Um, but yeah, it's definitely a great story. And again, the graphics are beautiful. The opening where you're coming in from the boat, it just seems and feels so relaxing. It's almost like the calm before the storm, and I think it's really great. Chapter 3 is where the story really starts to progress and you start to see exactly what has the opportunity to be in store. So here I gave the storyline an 8 because it's really, really great, though it's not quite peaked yet. So it's got that really solid build up. For creepiness, I gave it a 7 because this is where it really starts to ramp up, and I think there's a jump scare or two that I may not have realized at the time of playing through. Again, atmosphere, audio, and graphics are a 10 because everything at this point is on point. Um, there is the echoing a bit, I think, because I had gotten the new headset, but at this point it kind of adds to it. If it's not in this section, then it would have been out of chapter 4. Um, but there's lots to investigate for chapter 3. So overall, it got 45 points out of 100. Um, it's slowly getting there. Like I said, there's not too many. Um, there's not too many things that are not part of the final outcome at this point. Everything is leading up to it, and I thoroughly enjoyed investigating the manor and seeing just what has to be found. And yes, there was some lagging, but that was more on my part. It had nothing to do with the game. It was just me trying to look around at everything and find all of the hidden clues. It's definitely probably one of my favorite chapters, if only for the fact of looking at how many books are in that house alone. Really huge fan of books, especially really good books. There are very few books that I don't find good, but chapter 3 really gives you the opportunity to see what it's like with the mansion. Chapter 4 brings you into the underbelly of um, the island, or at least the entrance to the underbelly, where you find out just what happened to get to this point and find out um, what really happened to the Hawkins family. So, in terms of grading for chapter 4 storyline, this is the first 10 that I give because it's so spectacular and thrilling, and it really makes you think and see what's going on. Creepiness is definitely up at a 9. Atmosphere is a 10. The audio, because of the echo, I found it lowered it in some aspects but raised it in others. So I couldn't feel justified giving it a 10. I did, however, give it a 6, just because there was some audio issues, and I personally felt that it pulled away from the storyline and from the gameplay, even though the echo on some of the aspects was really, really cool. And again, graphics were a 10. So this is really where I had my new headset and the echo was found. Even though it wasn't noticed during the gameplay, I did have a hard time kind of um, figuring out what volumes needed to be kept at for the game not to be too loud but not too quiet either. So that was more of a playing around with settings thing and not from actual gameplay. I really like the maze through chapter 4 where you have to figure out how to get out of the underbelly of the mansion and see what's next. Um, Finding out that this underground cult is being led by, people who are supposed to be dead is really something that not a lot of people are going to be expecting. And I really think that it's that surprise that makes the story progress that much better. or story progression that much better. And the reaction when you go into the cutscenes are beautiful in this game. They're so well done. Nothing feels over the top or not enough. It's always that perfect amount of storyline, dialogue, atmosphere, everything all combined. It's really and truly great. Um, I don't think that there's too much that could be said negatively for Chapter 4. I really enjoyed it. Going into Chapter 5, I find that this is where most of the scores tend to balance out in the higher numbers, because at this point the story is starting to reach its peak and everything else is just going along with it. So the storyline, the creepiness, the atmosphere, and the graphics, I gave a 10. I did give the audio a 9, but that was more because it didn't feel up to par. Only simply because, again, it was playing with the new headset, and when you're hearing things in both ears that you're not used to, it definitely throws you off guard. However, um, going through the insane asylum, I definitely wasn't a fan of the audio where you could hear things coming up behind you. Sorry if I'm kind of tripping over my tongue, but I'm not entirely sure how I want to phrase things until I phrase it. But yeah, so having that really creepy in both of your ears at once audio, I think that's what pulled away from, the scoring for me, because it was just on the verge of too much. Um, Other than the fact that it is an insane asylum and you have to get through it without getting caught, I don't think that there was too much that I disliked about this level. Um, I definitely, I love the graphics. I I did try to count how many times I said the word "eep," because I know some people um, were asking about it, and in this chapter, I did say it 3 times that I counted. It probably winds up being about, I think, 10 times throughout the whole game, if not more. It's at that point it's more of a joke, because yes, people can be really tough or feel that they're really tough, but as soon as they get caught off guard, you know in general people tend to make strange or funny noises. So escaping the insane asylum is definitely not one of my favorite episodes or chapters in the game, but it has its merits. Chapter 6 is definitely one of my least favorite chapters in the entire game. Um, for a game about Cthulhu, the interdimensional Shambler shows up one time far too many. It's not my favorite character, in case you missed it. Throughout any of the gameplay, I've very clearly stated how much I hate it. So this one, the storyline, I gave it an 8. The creepiness, if I went above a 10, would definitely be easily a 20. But because it's capped off at 10, that's where it stays. Atmosphere, also a 10. The audio was a 9. And that was because you could hear him breathing in the back of your head. And yeah, not a fan. Not a fan at all. And again, the graphics are a 10. I was debating giving it a 9 because of what the Shambler looks like, but I can't justify taking that point away, because the graphics are just so on par and such high quality that it felt almost insulting to lower it because I don't like a character. Um, I do love the fact that it takes place in an art gallery slash museum, so you get before you actually trigger the cutscene and all of the nastiness that is interacting with the Shambler of any capacity, you actually get a chance to look through the different display cases and the different pieces on the walls and whatnot. And you get to see, if you actually look at um, the different display cases, you actually see the dagger that you need is under the we'll call it a hieroglyphic stone because I'm not sure quite what else to call it, because it does have symbols on it. Or if you know what you're doing, you go in to the left and trigger it and so on. But the detail on each individual piece is incredible, and you do expect that from a game of this caliber. So, foul creature aside, it's a 10 across the board. With the blasted thing, I will try to mind my language because at this point in time, swearing is not needed, though those sentiments are felt. Love the storyline, hate the character. Chapter 7 is easily one of my favorite chapters in the whole game, because of the fact that it is done in a bookstore. I did give it a lower rating for the creepiness, just because bookstores, when they're empty, cannot be creepy. There's just too many wonderful things about bookstores for them to be creepy, and there's not much that really happens in this chapter that would raise the creepy factor. So for the storyline, it's a 10. For the creepy factor, it's a low 3, which is unfortunate, but you cannot convince me to make it higher because it's just not a scary or creepy point in time of the game. For the atmosphere, it's a 9. For the for the atmosphere, it's 10. For the audio, it is a 9 because there's not much audio to work with. It's mostly walking around the bookstore and just talking to yourself. And obviously, the graphics are a 10. I love the fact that going through the bookstore and the reconstruction, you get to see what happened, why it happened, and you get to see the Necronomicon that if you pay attention to Algernon Drake talking in the bar when you first get to Darkwater, he does mention it, if not directly saying its name. He does talk about the book and gives you something to look forward to when you actually find it, or rather find where it was. I really like the fact that you have to use the gramophone as a means to find the clues as to what happened and how to open the safe. Like I said, I don't think that there's anything really that I disliked in the bookstore, because it's hard to be negative about something that I enjoy so thoroughly. For chapter 8, we go into Marie's point of view, and it's not my favorite part of the storyline, but I do find that it helps progress the events. So the storyline, I give it a 10. This is another one where the creepy factor is a 3. Just because there's not a lot to be creeped about in this chapter. And then atmosphere, audio, and graphics are all a 10. I find that going through the hospital as Marie gives a fresh aspect on the events going on, but it also feels like the filler that it is. Being able to get a couple of trophies in this section is always fun, especially if you're trophy hunting. But in general, It's not my favorite chapter of the game. If anything, it's um, it's among the chapters that I like and enjoy, but it's definitely not my favorite. It's not a chapter that I dislike too much, though. Um, Again, it's got really great graphics and atmosphere. It's just not a solid all the way through chapter because I feel that it's very much a filler portion. Chapter 9 is definitely the peak of the game where it's 10 across the board. The creepy factor just keeps you on the edge of your seat. Um, that blasted Shambler, even though I know he's there, still manages to get a jump scare out of me every time. I hate it. It's definitely, like, if I could avoid it, I would. Um, the light maze or holographic maze or whatever you want to call it is a really cool aspect of this chapter, and it really adds that extra level of fun to it where it's not just a tedious, okay, I have to go here to progress the story aspect of it. It's definitely something that you don't see in a lot of games, or at least not a lot of games that I've played, where you have um, one control system or one means of control where, you know, you just walk straight and then you make whatever action you have to do. In this case, you alternate between the green zone and the red zone. You're essentially playing red light, green light, or the Weeping Angel game with the interdimensional Shambler, which is just a foul creature to begin with. Um, really not a fan if you haven't guessed by now. Um, but the aspect of going red light, green light, and being in that safe zone, and then being super aware that you are not safe if your light goes out. It definitely is a more thrilling aspect of the game. And as I said, it does keep you on your toes, and it really changes the pace up a bit. So again, storyline, creepiness, atmosphere, audio, and graphics, everything is a 10 across the board. As much as I hate the Shambler, I think I really enjoyed this section of the game a lot. It's probably among my favorite parts of the game, even with the jump scare. And I think the jump scare really adds to the fun of it, even though it's not a pleasant event to be jump scared. So for chapter 10, it's easily one of my least favorite chapters, if not my absolute least favorite, because of the Shambler. Again, this one, storyline, creepiness, atmosphere, audio, and graphics are all 10 across the board. Um, I really, truly cannot express how much I hate this section because it puts you in constant awareness of the Shambler and not just a jump scare. The flash or blinding mechanic is really neat because you don't see that with a lot of games. I don't like the fact that, you have to run into the safe box because it should not be needed. Um, the fact that you do not run faster than the Shambler as Sarah really detracts from the aspect of getting away. But this part of the game is so stellar and so well done that I have nothing bad to say about it. Aside from the fact that I hate the character itself, that's a me problem. That's not a you problem. Um, I really can't stand how this thing looks, and I think Grim decided to choose several of these thumbnails because not only do they suit the chapters that I'm discussing, but also to torment me knowing how much I hate the Shambler, and he picks the thumbnails that have the most of this flipping creature to throw in my face. I really like the the progression of the storyline, how you're seeing the events unfold through through Sarah's eyes by way of the Necronomicon, because at this point, yeah, you're playing as Sarah, but you're seeing through her eyes, because the Necronomicon and the Leviathan have, they work in tandem even if they're separate entities, and the Leviathan is showing you the way of what you need to face. I'm just glad that this chapter is the final chapter with the Shambler. There is a painting later on, but it's not this one. So for chapter 11, I feel that it drags a bit for storyline wise, because you do get to see through the eyes of Kat, the leader of the bootleggers, but I don't feel that it's necessary, in the sense that you don't really need to see from her point of view that the island is going crazy. So for that, I give the storyline a 9. The creepiness, atmosphere, audio, and graphics, I leave at a 10, because everything else is just super on point. Chapters 11 and 12 were conjoined into the same video just for the timing, because by themselves they would have been too short to put up, and because I think the one by itself was like 15 minutes, and the other one I don't think was much over 20. So they weren't very long storyline wise or play wise. So it just made more sense to combine the two. For chapter 12 of the same section, the storyline, I left it at a 9, because it didn't feel like there was a lot of progression. It did feel kind of slow. It wasn't as it wasn't dragging as much as it could have been, like the earlier chapters, where it didn't quite reach what it could have. Creepiness, I left it at an 8. I brought it down to an 8 because it wasn't as creepy as I thought it could have been, especially with people being essentially zombified by the Leviathan's effect on the island, and not quite sure what else would have set it off, but it just seemed that it wasn't as creepy as it could have been. The zombie aspect really slowed it down, I felt, instead of giving it that extra edge. Atmosphere, audio, and graphics were a 10, because they're massively on par, and there's not much to fault for this chapter. It's or this section, because it is coming up to the end of the game. It does start to have that tension, kind of holding on, okay, what's going to happen next. Chapter 13 is effectively the beginning of the end, because this is where all of your previous choices start to accumulate, and you sit there and just figure out that, okay, I'm coming up to the end of the game. I have a few choices left to make, if any. But it's this last section of the game that requires a lot of critical thinking, and you to really pay attention to the story and to the actions that you make to be able to progress. And the thing that I find that's really cool is that it's got the additional puzzles, and it kind of lets you replay different parts of the game from earlier on. So for this, I gave it 10s for storyline, creepiness, atmosphere, audio, and graphics. There's not a thing that I found about this chapter of the game that I disliked. This is among my favorite chapters of the game, And I really enjoy how the story has come this far. Being that this was my third playthrough, I knew what it was going to happen, but it didn't thrill me any less. So hopefully for the people watching the gameplay or getting into the game for the first time, I hope they enjoyed the journey as to what their choices have led them to do so far, and to pay attention to the fact that you're not quite there, but it's at this point where you've reached the point of no return. You have to see it through to its completion to get that final oomph of satisfaction. Um, I really thoroughly enjoyed this chapter. Chapter 14 is definitely the bittersweet end because it is the end of the game. This is where all of your choices come to fruition. This is where you make the final choice, where there's 4 endings. So you can either call Cthulhu, um, do the reverse ceremony, commit suicide, and I don't know what the 4th one is because I haven't unlocked it yet. I've played the game 3 times so far, and it was only on this last playthrough that I had 3 of the available endings as an option to me. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see that 4th ending either on my own final playthrough, or if Grim gets it posted before I have a chance to replay the game. Either way, the graphics are amazing, the story is amazing, everything about this game has reached its peak and it's just coasting at this point. The only thing that I could say that I dislike about chapter 14 is the amount of stairs that you have to climb, because it just feels tedious once you reach a certain point. It's like, okay, enough with the stairs, just get me to the top to do what I have to do. I really like the fact that you can see Cthulhu's outline in the clouds as the lightning strikes. After the credits, regardless of which ending you choose, there's a cutscene, and it really shows you the outcome and the effect your choice has. So if you call Cthulhu, you get a cutscene. If you don't call him and you do the reversal ceremony, you get an end scene. If you commit suicide and don't take part in the ritual in any capacity, you get another cutscene. Whatever the 4th option is, you'll get a cutscene there. And like I said, the song from the beginning when you wake up in your office that's playing, I'll See You in My Dreams, is also the song that plays in the end credits as just a refresher of it. And it's really a pretty song if you listen to it in its entirety. It's about a 2-minute long song. It's not that long by today's standards. All in all, it's a beautiful song that rounds out to this incredible game thoroughly. So in this last section, I just want to give a recap of the grading, how I did it, and how I made my choices, etc. I also want to address how I chose the names for the chapters. So each chapter Grim and I wanted to give its own name instead of just generic chapter 1, chapter 2, etc. We wanted each chapter to be personalized to each title to be personalized to each chapter based on what happens in the gameplay. So obviously it begins through Daggz' eyes, is where we first wake up and try to figure out what's going on. Welcome to Dark Water is where we first come in on the boat, and you just get that stunning, absolutely beautiful cutscene of arriving on the island. Hawkins Manor awaits. it's approaching this dark, foreboding, almost Addams Family like manner, and going on from there. Madness in the Maze was a fun one because we wanted to find an alliteration, if we could, for a couple of the chapters. Um, we did wind up changing a couple of the chapter names after they were edited or submitted, just because they felt more fun, um, or something was more fitting than what we had originally. Um, I th- we chose, or rather, I chose because it was my playthrough, but to stick to the um, same format. So a specific theme on Share Factory where the videos were put together, um, specific fonts, and obviously using the intros and outros that Grim worked tirelessly on to create. So props, Grim, because your creative abilities continue to amaze me every day. Um, Going for the grading option, I really wanted to try and make it you know, a fun way to review the game instead of just saying, I like this, I like that, and being done with it. It also gave me an opportunity to really focus on what I felt were the best parts of the game. Um, so through the game, most of the points were really high because I didn't find very many faults with them. I think that it's very difficult to find fault with something that is so well done. It is possible, just less likely than if it was really poorly done, in which case, stuff would have been graded a lot lower. Um, this brings us to the overall grading of the game. So for storyline, it was a 9, creepiness, it was an 8, atmosphere was a 10, audio was a 9, graphics were a 10, which gave it an overall score of 9 out of 10. I had a lot of fun playing this game. I hope you all enjoyed following along with me, and we look forward to hearing from you, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys!